Hallelujah. perfect. Yeah. Good. This is quite a night.
I need your furniture on this.
What was that, Colin?
Perfect.
I
think I started something.
Azriel, can you pour me a little bit of that? Do you mind? I'll take the. I don't want to say the name. You know,
I was wondering if there was a professional opportunity.
It's perfect. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh.
I don't think so.
Great.
I'm gonna check it out. It's the weed, baby. It's the weed. I'm telling you. It's his first time trying weed. That's what happens. Yeah.
Almost
Huh?
recreational is almost legalized.
Oh my gosh. Mamish, you know this is going to be a good cheer. No, it's a good cheer. It means the Sultan is Mamish, like, he's trying to do whatever he can to share this.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Oh boy. Okay. Sorry. What? The cup? Oh, what's in that? I don't know. Everyone dropped something. No, the weed. That I don't know. Well, that's why they dropped.
All right. Chaburah, come, let's go a little bit. Plus, I apologize. The sheets are a little bit wet. And now they're comments. And they're comments now also. No, it was me. I think I poured a whole bunch of stuff on here. Of course.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, who's sitting there?
I think the cups are just very flimsy.
I recognize the high part.
I'm like the toughest time at the camera.
Kenny was saying.
Except you're the fourth person already.
A couple good songs. There's still songs out there, which is ridiculous.
Shlomo Guys has a whole album of just like old school gems that no one even knows.
All right, Chaburah. All right, good evening, everyone. First of all, I will say shkayach for accommodating the schedule change. Thank you. I'm going to be at Meretz Hashem at a chassidus tomorrow night in New York, but I didn't want to miss another week of this year. So thank you, everyone. And yeshkoch to Zevi. Tonight's chili and crackers and yeshkoch to Rab Eli, our bourbon sponsor, to Mr. Zwani, our Scotch sponsor. Baruch Hashem, a great zuchla. So what I'd like to do at Meretz Hashem for the next 2 weeks, because we have this week, next week, and then it's hard to believe, but the following week already is the night of B'dikas Chametz in Meretz Hashem. As I'd like to continue in the Torah of the Chalban, but I'd like to focus on the Chalban, the Talilei Chaim on Pesach. And here, Meretz Hashem after Pesach, we'll resume with Hakitzu V'Raninu. But as we're going to see, the Chalban has a number. There's a whole sefer on Pesach. He has a number of incredible pieces, and I want to start with one tonight, and I think in Meretz Hashem it'll probably take us between this week and next week to truly get through it.
How many songs does he have?
Tons on every chumash. He has a Bereishis Shmos, Vayikra B'Midbar Dvarim, Pesach, Shavuos, Purim, Chagei Tishrei, a lot of Torah. So I'll say, so take a look. So that you can see the title. The title of this piece over here is Ha'Pa'ula Ha'Mamoshes B'Leil HaSeder, which here the Chalban is going to teach us. I've been thinking a lot about this concept. I spoke in my women's shir last night. I spoke about this a little bit as well, which is like the avoda of the Leil HaSeder. And what is it exactly that we are supposed to accomplish over the course of the Seder? So very often you ask a person, what are you supposed to accomplish over the Seder? And the person says, okay, maybe, matzah, Pesach matzah maror, like Rabbi Gamliel said, or maybe chayiv adam liros it's atzmo kili yotzem mitzrayim. I'm supposed to view myself as if I left Egypt. But the Chalban says something really incredible. Look what he writes. He says, again, this is on page Yud Zayin. He says, Kimei tzeischa me'eretz mitzrayim er eno niflos. Ena kavana lomar shekmo shahaya b'mitzrayim ken yela asad lavo. So we'll say, so first we'll look at the pasuk. The pasuk says, ultimately, like the days that you left Egypt, I will show you wondrous things. Hashem speaking to Klal Yisrael. So the Chalban says, it's not the pshat that Hashem is telling us that the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the miracles of the Exodus, will repeat themselves. That's not what Kodesh Baruch Hu is saying. Listen to this, was say, Elo, Shalamaisa Yetzias Mitzrayim, He havrakas or hageula. Now, there says the Chalban. What we're supposed to understand is that Yitzias Mitzrayim, when we left Egypt, we also listen to this lashon, havrakas or hageula. What does that phrase mean? Havrakas or hageula? Havraka is like boker. It's like boker. It was the dawn, right? It was the beginning, like barak. Barak is lightning, so right, light. It was the dawn, the beginning of the light of Geula. So Rabbi say what the Chalban is pointing out over here is an incredible yesod, which is that, Rabbi Soloveitchik speaks about this as well. Rabbi Soloveitchik says that the Ribono Shel Olam is Haya Hove V'yeh. So Rabbi Ruvain, Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov had a grandson this week. Baruch Hashem. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. So it says, we offer, right, grandson, right? Grandson, good. So Rabbi Soloveitchik says that Kadosh Baruch Hu is Haya Hove V'yeh, past, present, and future. And the Rav says that to a certain degree, we have the ability to tap into this dynamic as well. That the Yid, the Jew, lives in past, present, and future simultaneously. Rabbi Soloveitchik called this the unitive time consciousness. Unitive time consciousness. That I can live past, present, and future all at the same time, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the truth is, where do you see this unitive time consciousness really come to the forefront? Leil HaSeder. Because think about what happens over the course of the Seder. We start out with what? Avadim Hayinu. We start out with what was. We then focus on what is. We are free. And then after benching, we focus on what will be. All over the course of one Seder, past, present, and future, all wound together in one beautiful night. The Chalban says, along those same lines, the Yid, it's not just the pshat that Yitzias Mitzrayim was a historical event. He says Yitzias Mitzrayim was an event that began a process. Yitzias Mitzrayim was the beginning of the dawn of the light of Geula. V'hi mamshicha lachtar ba'omek hametzius u'ba'omek nishmos Yisrael ad ha'geula ha'shlema. And ultimately, again, the light began to shine. Light began to shine when we left Egypt, but the light becomes amplified more and more and more until the light ultimately shines at its full brightness when Mashiach comes. So I'll say this is incredibly important because here what the Chalban is doing is he's explaining that Yitzias Mitzrayim was not just simply a historical event. It's the beginning of a process. It's the beginning of something. And where does the process end? The process actually ends where? Mashiach. And I will say, by the way, the truth is Mefurish Gemara, right? Because the Gemara at the end of the first chapter of Maseches Brachos discusses this idea: will we remember the Exodus in the Messianic era or not? There's a whole discussion about this. But one thing is clear, which is Chazal understood this connection between Yitzias Mitzrayim and Mashiach. It's almost their bookends. Yitzias Mitzrayim is the beginning. It's the dawn of the light of Geula, and ultimately, again, that Geula doesn't end, or doesn't fully actualize until Mashiach. Which I will say, if you think about just this Yesod by itself, it's so profound. Because I think very often the way we look at Jewish history is kind of like in what's the word? Not pockets, but like in cohorts, like in segments. So like, right, there was Egyptian servitude and then emancipation. That's one chelik. There was the desert. That's another chelik, right, with all of its stuff in there, including Matan Torah, the Meraglim. There's Eretz Yisrael, Yoshua, up until Bayis Rishon. Then, Bayis Rishon, Bavel, Bayis Sheni. All right, obviously in the middle of there, Purim, Chanukah, Bayis Sheni, Galus. And we're currently in that Tekufa of Galus. We're in that period of Galus. But the Chalban says it's not true. There's a continuum of time. And the truth is, the beginning of the Jewish experience for Klal Yisrael, the beginning of our national experience was Yitzias Mitzrayim. That was the first step in the Geula. The first step in Klal Yisrael's redemption. But here's the incredible part, I will say. According to this approach, redemption has not yet been completed. Right? We're still in the process. We've been in the since the moment we left Egypt, we have been in the beginning of Geula. And as the years go forward, we take additional steps, additional advances. You know what this is very reminiscent of as well? Rav Yehuda Kohen Cook so writes about this in the name of Am Yisrael Kohen Cook, that people, Rav Cook Sr. didn't discuss this because he lived before the Medina, but there's a whole discussion when the state of Israel was first founded. Is this aschalta de geula, right? Is this the beginning? Is this the beginning? Is this the beginning? Welcome. This is, right? It's been a long time since I've said that, by the way.
Here in this room.
Yeah, right. I think that's the last time I said good morning. I think I was saying good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. Yeah. Not you. It was Mr. Schoenfeld Senior. But I have so much to say, but I'm not going to. So we'll say. So they asked about is the Medina Schalta de Geula, right? Is the Medina? So again, you had Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kohen Cook saying, "What are you talking about Schalta de Geula? So what are you talking about? Is the Medina the beginning of Geula?" Of course, the Medina is not the beginning of Geula. Why is the founding of the state not the beginning of the Medina of the Geula? Because the Geula started way before. Now, Rav Tzvi Yehuda said from a Zionistic perspective, maybe it started with the Talmidei HaGra, students of the Gra, but the truth, according to the Chalban, of course it's not Aschalta de Geula. Ultimately, again, when did Geula begin? I will say Geula began when we left Egypt. That's when Geula began. And what's happening? It's simply continuing to unfold now each and every year. Each and every year. So look what the Chalban writes. He says, and it continues to grow brighter. It continues to grow greater. Ada Geula Shtem until Mashiach. Which I will say, by the way, if it was enough to come tonight for the chili, and if not for the chili, for the unnamed bourbon, and if not for the unnamed bourbon, the very peaty scotch, but if not for any of that, then the Yesod that what? The Yesod, I will say, that Yitzias Mitzrayim is not a self-contained event. It's the beginning of a process in which we are still seeing unfold right in front of us. It's the beginning of Klal Yisrael's Geula, and that process continues to unfold to this very day. V'davar zeh, Muvan mikama yisodos. Reishis. So the Chalban says this concept is really predicated on a number of different ideas. Reishis. What's the first idea? Right? The first idea, Reishis, Maisa avasim labanim. So we have a concept, Maisa avasim labanim, which means that what? The actions of the forefathers are a foreshadow for the children. V'dor Mitzrayim, hu bechinas garin l'chol hadoros kulam. I will say, listen to this yisod. Right? That look at his word over it. Dor Mitzrayim, the generation of Mitzrayim, the generation who left Mitzrayim, garin. I will say, what's a garin? A seed. A seed. Right? A seed for future generations. See, I will say, it's not the pshat that Yetzias Mitzrayim is supposed to be looked at as its own independent, self-contained event. Yetzias Mitzrayim is the beginning. It's the beginning, and when's the end? When's the end of Yetzias Mitzrayim? When's the end? When Mashiach comes. So I will say, it was the beginning, and we're still part of this entire process that began with our ancestors when they left Egypt thousands of years ago, and only ends when Mashiach comes. Mikan anu lemeidim, shema she'era lavasin b'Mitzrayim, hu his havas hagarin. What happened to our ancestors in Egypt, ultimately again, is the beginning of the sprouting of the seed. V'chaladoros kulam, Einam ela hotza me'akoach ala poel shal osa ha'or hagolum bigarin. And what we experience to this very day, the light we experience to this very day, is not a light that comes from us. It's a light that comes from Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we'll say, what a beautiful metaphor. That Exodus was the seed. It was the seed. Now, Baruch Hashem, the seed has taken root. The seed germinated. The seed is beginning to sprout. The seed is growing. But everything that occurs within Klal Yisrael, every step and stage of Geula, ultimately, again, is a chilek, is a piece of that garin, is a piece of that seed. He goes on, he says, and every single generation, and we'll say, think about this just a moment, where do we glean our koach from? And we'll say, if you think about this for just a moment, right? Just think about Klal Yisrael for just a moment. And you think about what's happened within Klal Yisrael in the last week. Right? 3 terror attacks in the last week. Be'er Sheva, Chadera, and now Bnei Brak. And of course, like, in the middle of all of that, the passing of Rav Chaim. Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livracha. Now, I want to say, sometimes you think, you take a step back and you say to yourself, like, how does a nation like ours, and by the way, in the midst of all this, we're absorbing refugees from a war zone like no one else is doing, right? I say it is. I had this this morning to speak at an Israel Bonds event, and I said, like, how incredibly amazing is it that less than a century after our people were almost systematically annihilated, where when we were in need, no one else, forget about open the door, no one else even acknowledged that they heard the knock. No one else even acknowledged that millions upon millions of people just simply needed a haven, just simply needed a safety net, somewhere to go. And yet, amazingly enough, who's absorbing per capita the greatest number of refugees in the entire world? Israel, the Jewish homeland. The Jewish homeland will say, so you think to yourself, like, where does Klal Yisrael get the koach to do that from? Right? Where does that koach come from? Where does the koach come after 3 terror attacks to keep going? After 3 terror, okay, we'll say, like, think about it just a moment, like, we're sitting here, we're learning Torah, we're farbringing, right? We're besimcha. How can we be besimcha? There are so many families sitting Shiva now, so many broken hearts, so many broken lives, so many because I will say, the nitzchias of Klal Yisrael is the ability to find light even in the midst of darkness. The ability to gather ourselves together and push ourselves forward and not to lose ourselves in the pain of loss and in the pain of destruction. We keep going. Where does that come from? The Chalban says, you know where it comes from? Yetzias Mitzrayim. That was the seed. And the seed continues to germinate, continues to flourish. That's the seed. Everything comes from Yetzias Mitzrayim. It all comes from Yetzias Mitzrayim. So there it goes on. He says, Chalban goes on, he says, Shenis. So I'll say that's number one. Number one theological piece is that Yetzias Mitzrayim is the garin, it is the seed, it is the source of all redemptive light for Klal Yisrael. And everything that happens to us by way of redemption is just a further unfolding of the Exodus narrative, or the Exodus light. Shenis, number two, HaTorah, Ki Yisod HaChaim Shel HaDoros Kulam. Also, we know that the Torah, ultimately, again, is the Yisod, is the foundation of life for all generations. Kol HaKasuv Ba, Hainu Nitzchi. The Gonis Bikir Ba Mazon Umechaya Avor Kol Yisrael. We'll say every single word that's in the Torah is eternal, and embedded in every single word in the Torah, ultimately, again, is a sense of sustenance that sustains all of Klal Yisrael. L'orech, bless you. L'orech kol shnos ha'historia. Lefichach, Navin Hativ, Shegu'ulas Mitzrayim hi shoresh kol ha'ge'ulos kulon ad acharis hayamim. So here, ultimately, again, so the Chalban is pointing out, Rabbosai, Yetzias Mitzrayim occupies an incredible amount of biblical real estate. Right? First of all, everything is Zechel Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the Exodus is mentioned more times than one could count throughout the entire Torah. Why? Chalban says it's the same idea. The Torah is what sustains us as a people. The Torah is what gives us life. And the Torah HaKadosha, by consistently highlighting the Exodus, is telling us that Yetzias Mitzrayim is the Shoresh Kol HaGulah. So we'll say, I can't emphasize this point enough, that it's not just the pshat that Yetzias Mitzrayim was something wonderful that occurred, right? A historical event that was fantastic and it showed us we could escape slavery. No, it's that Yetzias Mitzrayim is the beginning of our story. And it's a story that's still unfolding. And it was the first step in the Geula of Mashiach. That's what Yetzias Mitzrayim is. It's not a self-contained redemptive narrative. It's not a self-contained redemptive chapter. It's the beginning of our ongoing national story of redemption. It began ultimately again with Yetzias Mitzrayim, and ultimately again continues on until Mashiach comes. Look at the second paragraph. He writes, "Vayomim ha'elu niskarim v'nasim," quoting from Megillas Esther. B'chol shana v'shana. Also, listen to this. This is incredible. So, what happens every year on Pesach? Get ready for this. What happens every year on Pesach? See, I will say, the reason why it's so important to be able to learn this now is because, I always find Pesach is one of those Yamim Tovim where you can't prepare in the moment, right? You can't prepare in the moment because in the moment, there's so much stuff going on, right? In the moment, right, you're home, you're running late, the matzahs, broken matzahs, this, all right, all these, like the million things around the kids, this one's falling asleep, we gotta move quickly, this one's hungry, this one's angry, this one's happy, right? A whole balagan. to really appreciate what's happening on the Leil HaSeder, you have to prepare beforehand. And that's why we're starting this now, this limud 2 weeks before. So the Chalban says, do you know what happens on the night of the Seder? B'chol shana v'shana, chozer ha'ar laha'ir. Every single year on the night of the Seder, that original luminescent light, that first light of Geula, shines bright. So I will say, if you can imagine, what Chalban is saying over here is that there is a certain ar that is unlocked every year at the Leil HaSeder. Although again, each and every day, the redemptive the redemptive light of Pesach, shines. Lemaisa, again, the light shines brightest on the night of the Seder. Me'ein osa ma'ora upoel pu'ulos atzumos ba'avia kula. Just to give you a little bit of an illustration like this, I always tell my children whenever we go outside by Shvol Chamas, when they open the door by Shvol Chamas, I always tell my kids, look at the moon. Look at the moon. And here's the incredible part. That the moon, and it's a full moon, middle of the month, Chash Baruch Hu purposely took us out the middle of the month so that there would be a lot of natural light even at night. If you think about it, you look at the moon, and isn't it incredible that the moon we look at on the night of our Seder is the same exact moon that our ancestors looked at thousands of years ago. It's the same moon. What a unifying reality. I stand under the same bright luminescent moon that my great-great-great-great-grandparents stood under when they found the courage to leave Mitzrayim. The Chalban says it's not just true for the actual light of the moon, it's true for the spiritual light of Pesach as well. There comes the Leil HaSeder, that light of redemption, that light of the beginning of redemption shines again. Upoel pu'ulos atzmos ba'avia kula. And that light has the ability to affect incredible realities, create incredible realities. Kach balayla ze yatzanu mishiba legeula me'abdus lecherus v'chein hu bechol shana v'shana mamish. I will say, what's the power of Pesach? The power of Pesach is the ability, right? Historical Pesach was we left servitude and we became free. What's the real power of Pesach? Each and every year, we have the ability to leave servitude and become free. That same power of the original Pesach is unlocked each and every year at the Leil HaSeder. That light, that original light of Pesach, that redemptive light that told people you don't have to be slaves, you can go free, you can venture out into the unknown. That same light shines on the first night of Pesach every single year. Lefichach. Listen to this, so I'll say. Now, okay, so this is the first part. Now the Chalban is going to make a dramatic turn. So we'll say, so now this is the first part, right? So far what we have is this incredible theological idea that Pesach is the garin. It's the seed. It's not a self-contained redemptive event. It's the seed for all future redemptions as well. And that seed is continuing to blossom. That seed is continuing to flourish. And ultimately only achieves full maturation when Mashiach comes. So we are benefiting from the seed of Yetzias Mitzrayim to this very day. Second thing says the Chalban is that at the end of the day, that original light, that original redemptive light, shines each and every year at Pesach. So, and just like that original Pesach gave us the courage to leave our servitude, so too when that light shines each and every year, we have the ability to leave our servitude. Me'abdus lecherus v'cheinu b'chol shana v'shana mamish. But I say the power of Pesach is you could leave your shibud, you could leave your servitude. But watch this. But I say this is wild. Lefichach kedei lotzeis lecherus tzrichin anu lahachnis atzmenu la'ol hashibud v'rishumo. Get ready for this. Says the Chalban. But in order to go free, you have to first what? You have to first enter yourself or allow yourself to enter slavery. You can't go free unless you first enter into servitude. What? We spend a whole lifetime trying to extricate ourselves from servitude. The Chalban says no. If you want to go free on Leil HaSeder, the first step to going free is you have to become a slave. You have to enter into servitude. Okay, we'll see what this means. I have to literally, says the Chalban, I have to enter in to the very things that are holding me captive. I have to enter into the very things that are keeping me in servitude. I have to go and enter into the very things that are being meshabed me. Ubiskulas halayla yiskabru lahachniam ulaabdam at shenetze lecheres gemura. And the power of Pesach is that what? Then, only then, if I'm willing to enslave myself, if I'm willing to enter into the servitude, then and only then can I tap into the redemptive power of Pesach and free myself. So I'll say, what does this mean? Right? This by the way, I saw it's like it's the strangest formulation that one could ever possibly imagine. Because we speak about Pesach all the time. Yitzias Mitzrayim, Cheros, Yitzia Mina Avdos, leaving the servitude. And now here I have the Chalban telling me, you want to go free on the night of Pesach? You want to tap into that to that emancipation? You want to see the light of freedom? You want to tap into the sapling of Israel? No problem. But first, you have to become a slave. First, you have to enter into your servitude. Look at the last paragraph on page of Zion. He says, Kol mahos retzef hadoros, hitalich shal zichuch v'yitzia mishibut. Says the Chalban, the entire journey, right, the entire flow of all the generations. But if you think about it, the Chalban says something amazing. We'll say, what is the essence of life? What is the essence of life? As individuals and as a nation, the essence of life is to become free, is to leave our servitude. Right? Isn't that the essence, the entire essence of life? As individuals and as a nation, I want to be purified, cleansed, and I want to leave my servitude. Look what he writes. Kol od yesh resha ba'olam, as long as there is evil in this world. Kol od yesh yisurim achovim, as long as there is suffering and pain. Kol od yesh maves bolam, as long as there is death in this world. Nimtza shadayin yesh shibud, there is still something that enslaves us. Va'anu lochamim bo, but yet we fight against all of the things that enslave us. Kol Yisrael b'chol adoros yachtov bi'ahava mitztarif dor lekodmo. And I will say the fight against servitude is not something we wage on our own, but rather again our battle is really fought on the shoulders of those who came before us, and those who come off after us will ultimately fight really standing on our shoulders. Umikulam ba'acherus alamim. And as a result of everyone's collective efforts, ultimately emancipation comes to the world. Hacherus tzricha lios gemura lo psharas. But I will say again, we'll just read this now, we'll explain it. Freedom has to be absolute. There are no compromises with freedom. Right? And as I will say, you can't be a little free. Right? Freedom, if you think about it, being free is an absolute state. Either you're free or you're not free. If you're partially free, then what? Then what? Right? Right? But again, so here's a perfect example. Right? You're stuck. So what's the halacha by chatzi v'chatzi ben chorin? Machlokes Yesham Beisil. What do we do? Right? Kofin and Sadon. Remember again, this is exactly the point. You see, it's Machlokes Yesham Beisil. Right? Beis Shammai said, chatzi v'chatzi ben chorin. It's fine. Let him serve his master one day. Let him serve himself one day. That was Beisil. Sorry. Beis Shammai says, what are you talking about? What could he do? He can't marry, he can't have a family, he can't do anything, because Beis Shammai essentially says there's no such thing as partial freedom. Right? If you're partially free, then you're effectively what? A slave. A slave. Right? That's what a slave is, someone who does not have complete freedom. So you might have 50% freedom, but freedom, it's incredible. It's like freedom is an absolute state. Right? Either you are or you aren't. And if you have to qualify the level of your freedom, by definition, that means you're not free. He goes on, he says, Rak cherus mi'ol hagoyim, lo rak cherus mitzaros u'machlos. But we'll say, but what does freedom really mean? Says the Chalban, freedom doesn't just mean freedom from persecution from the nations of the world. It doesn't just mean freedom, ultimately, again, from sadness, difficulty, illness. El cherus mi'malach hamoves. But you know what true freedom is? True freedom is freedom from death. We'll discuss this. Cherus mikol choshech v'astar selakus. The truest freedom is the freedom from darkness. So I'll say, you can tell the Chalban is mamish, like trying to, sometimes like somebody's trying to convey to you something that has such profundity, such depth, and I don't know what they're talking about, but I know that they're conveying to me something that is like overwhelmingly powerful. So like we read these words of the Chalban, and even this notion, right? Even this notion that I have to become a slave before I become free. Right? That what am I trying to free myself from? The malach hamaves, the darkness. I don't know what he's talking about. But yet, I think I know what he's talking about. He's talking about this absolute state of freedom. And maybe even better than the word freedom, might ultimately be a word transcendence. But let's go back for a moment and focus on the Chalban statement, also, which is the most intriguing part, that in order to become free, what do you have to do? What do you have to do? You have to enslave yourself first. What does that mean? Turn the page. Page Yud Ches. Page Yud Ches. Says the Chalban. Well, so we won't get to finish all of it tonight, but at least we'll start. Therefore, says the Chalban, in order to really become free, says the Chalban, like we said before, in order to become free, I have to enslave myself. I have to actively put, isn't this incredible? We spend our lives running away from servitude. And the Chalban says, no, you want free? You have to willingly enter servitude. La'orer roshem shalaklipa hamisnagedes. I will say what this literally means is to awaken the klipa. Klipa, I will say, remember again in Kabbalistic literature. So klipos refers to the shells that ultimately, again, obscure holiness. Each of us has what the Chalban calls this klipa hamisnagedes. What does misnagedes mean? Like a misnagid. What's a misnagid? What's a misnagid? Right? Someone who is against something. Like lehitnaged means to oppose something. So each of us has this klipa hamisnagedes. This layer that is pushing back on my quest for holiness. See, Rabosai, there's only really one thing I want in life. There's one thing I want in life. And it's what David HaMelech wanted in life as well. Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem osa avakesh shifti beveis Hashem. All I want is to be close to Hashem. That's all I want. Va'ani kirvas elokim tovli. All I want is to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's all I want. You know, the Malbim says on that pasuk that David HaMelech says, I only have one request, to dwell in the house of Hashem. So the Malbim says, really? That's your only request? You only have one thing you need in life? What about parnasa? What about children? What about tatzlocha? What about all the things that we daven for? And the Chalban says, the Malbim says something amazing. He says, David HaMelech understood that if you truly dwell in the house of Hashem, everything else comes together. It doesn't mean that if I dwell in the house of Hashem, I get everything that I want. But I'm able to navigate everything in life when I have an intact, beautiful, meaningful, close, and passionate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If I have shifti b'veis Hashem, then the truth is I have everything I need in order to be successful in this world. So the Chalban says, the greatest challenge we have is the klipa hamisnagedes. There's this force in life that's often pushing back against me. There's this thing, we'll discuss, there's this force, there's this koach, there's this klipa that's like a misnagid. It's pushing back against me. I want to be holy. I want to be good. I want to be close. That's what I want at my core. And this klipa misnagedes is always pushing back. He says, ki hine, tovin shalapamim ha'adam nimsa begadlos hamochin, ba'ar v'hatzlacha, u'beruchnius u'begashmius, as nishmaso shata b'merchave shchakim, l'lo shumaki. You know what I say? There are times in life where a person is mamish on such an elevated spiritual state, right? I'm having hatzlacha and everything. Hatzlacha in my ruchnius, in my gashmius, my spiritual life, my material life, right? Literally, again, I feel like my soul is soaring in the upper celestial sphere. Moshe b'chayav umale oneg. Life is good. Everything is going well. B'metzius zu nishkach kol hashibud nelma kol hatzara. You know, in moments where everything is going well in life, or both say the beautiful part is, what's the great part when things are going in life? What do you forget about? The things that are broken. Right? That's great, right? I forget the shibud. We'll discuss it in just a moment. Forget the shibud. Davar zeh kimenucha shabesu laniach lecha mikol rog zecha mi'itzon yadecha achadayin mitzios hashibud lo tukna the koach haklipa lo shav. Let me explain this now outside a little bit, just to discuss this. What does the Chalban mean when he says that I have to enter into shibud? Right? Rabbi said, let's think about this in just a moment. And this is an incredibly powerful yesod. See, the Chalban says, each of us has that thing which holds us captive. We have that thing. Halavai, it's only one thing, right? But maybe it's a behavior. Maybe it's a negative midah. Maybe it's a toxic relationship. Maybe it's an addiction. Who knows what it may be? But lamaisa, I have that thing that is meshabed me. It enslaves me. So says the Chalban something amazing. You could lead a successful life and never deal with that thing. We'll say, what's the proof to that? That's what most of us do, right? That's actually how most of us live, right? In other words, because what I do essentially is I build up a lot of good, do a lot of great stuff, accomplishing many wonderful things, but I never focus on that thing that I am enslaved to. What the Chalban calls the klipa hamisnagedas. And I will say that's why most of us go through life with that one struggle. There's that one thing, and halavai, it's only one thing, but let's talk about one thing that I've been battling against for years. And it's the one thing, and I do so many great things in life, but for some reason, that's the one thing I can't get any traction on, or I feel I can't get traction on it. And when I do, and I make a little bit of headway, I feel like something happens, and it just pushes me right back to where I started. That's what the Chalban calls the klipa misnagedes. So both say, that's my shibud. That's my mitzrayim. That's the thing that holds me down. That's the thing that holds me back. And says the Chalban, if you want chirus, if you want freedom, what do you have to do? The first step to freedom is what? You have to enslave yourself. What does it mean to enslave yourself? You have to face your demons. The only way to truly go free is to contend with my slavery. If I'm not really willing to look at that which is enslaving me, if I'm not really willing to contend with that which is holding me back, I cannot tap into the redemptive light of Pesach. Because the redemptive light of Pesach is a light that says you can go from servitude to freedom. You can extricate yourself from anything and everything that is personalistically holding you back. But the only way to tap into that redemptive power is to enter into servitude. And the act of entering into servitude means I'm willing to confront my oppressor. And I will say for any of us, my oppressor is not someone external to me. My oppressor is me. And negative things that I engage in, negative things that I do. Again, whatever, we've all fill in the blank for our own oppressors. That's my inner Mitzrayim. That's my inner oppressor. And if I want to go free, the first step is entering into servitude. And the process of entering into the servitude is A, identifying what's my oppressor, who's my oppressor, what's holding me back, what's my Mitzrayim, and then making a conscious decision that I want to leave. I don't want my life to always be subjugated and held back by this klipa hamisnagedes. I don't want to be enslaved to this behavior, to this midah, to this trait, to this. I don't want it anymore. I don't want it. But in order to say you don't want it, says the Chalban, you have to go back down to Mitzrayim. You have to confront it. You have to look it in the eye. And you have to say, I don't want you anymore. I don't want this in my life anymore. I don't want this to be part of my existence anymore. And says the Chalban, if I'm willing and courageous enough to do that, then something amazing happens. The night of Pesach comes, the garin, the sapling of freedom, the light, the original light of redemption shines, and Pesach gives me the power to go free. Pesach by itself gives me the power to go free. But you can only tap into that power if sometime before Pesach, you go into your Mitzrayim, identify your oppressor, look him in the eye, and tell him, I'm done with you. I lived my life with this midah, with this behavior, with this thing, whatever it is, for so many years. I don't want it anymore. I don't want it in my life anymore. Say goodbye to your Mitzrayim. Say goodbye to your klipa misnagedes. And if you're willing to go down into your shibud, then when the redemptive light of Pesach comes the night of the Seder, then and only then I can tap into that energy and I can truly go free. All right, chaburah, so we'll stop over here for tonight. Decide for tonight. Again, we're going to spend one more week on this piece.
Let's go to Mitzrayim.
Let's go to Mitzrayim.
You would think, though, that a Yom Kippur wouldn't it be the more natural opportunity to confront weaknesses?
Yes.
It's personalistic, it's not a national.
100%. But
Specifically changing that.
so I think here's the power of this. The power of this is because if you think about it, Mitzrayim is the notion of freedom. You see, Yom Kippur is the notion of atonement. And atonement and freedom are two very different things. It almost seems like, here's how I look at it. If you think about it calendrically, right, Pesach is the beginning of the year, right? Nisan is the Rosh Chodeshim. So it makes sense. The first step in personal growth is you have to stare down your Mitzrayim, right? You have to do your part. If I have my Pesach, then I could have a Yom Kippur. Then I could ask Hashem for atonement. Because imagine if you start out by asking for atonement before you've gone down to your Egypt, stared down your Egypt, repudiated your Egypt. What right do I have to ask God for absolution if I haven't done my part yet? So I think this model, the beautiful part of it is Yom Kippur is the natural follow-up ultimately to Pesach. All right, Chaver, shkoyach, amazing stuff.
Anybody doing Marv here? Is that
Marv, yeah.
They have it over there, Matt.
Oh, what time?
Where? The base manager? The small base manager?
You'll go check with them right now. They switched it around when they go to shows. I don't know anymore.
Wow. That was great chili.
Pretty good?
You watch that? You watch that?
Finally done this.
Unbelievable.